911, what's your emergency? 911, what's your emergency?
Be advised, Car 4 has control of the pursuit. Proceed with caution.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Crime Door. It's good to see all of you. I hope everybody's doing well this Tuesday evening. Hey, Frank Meister, how are you, my dear? Hi, Cindy. Hey, Cecil Hotel. Hi, David. Hey, Camaro Lover 73. Hey, Jinx. How are you, my dear? Hi, Joe. Hey, GP. Hey, She Warrior. Hey, Jill. How are you doing? Good to see you. Glad you're here with me. Aw, Jinx, I love you too. Thank you so much. Hi, Lynn. How are you? Good to see you. Yeah, don't forget the prayer walk for Abby and Libby is going to be October 13th at 1:30 p.m. at 1600 Old Camden Road there in Delphi, which is right at the Freedom Bridge. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you. Hi, Olivia. Hey, Roxy. How are you doing this evening? Hi, CJK. Hey, Salty Beach. How are you? Shadowbox. Oh my God. You're fighting your washing machine? That's never a good thing. Hey, Susie. How are you? Oh, I have a Samsung washer and dryer. I'm on my second set of Samsungs, by the way. Hey, Shane, how are you? Hey, Rescue, my favorite dog person ever. Good to see you. Hi, Angie B. Hey, Annabelle. Yeah, mine has trouble with balancing all the time. Hey, Ruckus, how are you, my dear? Good to see you. I hope you're feeling better. Hey, Julie, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you. So those of you that are new here, my moderators are the best. They will keep the chat civil. I ask that you respect each other, respect each other's opinions. Please don't make things personal. No attacks on myself or anyone in the chat. Please make sure that you are not attacking any family members of the victims. I don't allow that here on my channel. And we should have a great show. Oh, you are marvelous, darling. I'm very well aware how marvelous you are. Steve is traveling. I want to give a shout out to Steve from True Crime Web. Please make sure that you guys are keeping him in your thoughts and prayers as he's out there traversing across this great country, helping the family members of other missing and sadly deceased individuals. Hey, Scarlet Letter, good to see you. So tonight I thought we would talk about, I did a video today that I posted on opening statements, and I kind of went over opening statements, what they are, why they're important. And tonight I thought we would talk about some opening statements. I thought we would go over some of them. And I looked a few up and found some interesting things. But we have, today is September 17th. The jury selection in Allen County begins October 14th. And I believe that opening statements are scheduled to start on the 18th of October. Yay, Laura. Great. Awesome. Feel free to put any questions that you have for me in chat. I will star those. And at the end, I'll try to answer as many questions as I absolutely can. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I was trying to make it informative for people who don't really understand the whole dynamic of a trial. And I mean, it can get so bogged down with all the legal ease that keeps happening and going on. So, you know, there's a lot of crickets right now, you guys. It's really, really super quiet. And Frank Meister and I were talking earlier today. It's kind of like waiting for another shoe to drop and what's going to happen. Frank thinks that there's going to be a delay. I am kind of on the fence with that. I kind of see where there might be a delay possible, but I also see that the prosecution and the judge are all going forward, and they are all looking at a trial happening on the 14th of October. So unless the prosecutor or unless the defense comes up with something really drastic here soon, I really don't see that happening. But anything, again, is possible. Hey, Fire and Ice, good to see you. Yes, I will have Cheryl back as a guest when the trial goes. I will probably try and have her and my good buddy Susan Hendricks. And then I think I would like to try to have Mike King on with them as well. So I'm going to try and put that panel together, and we'll see. I firmly believe what Salty Beach says, that with this case, anything is possible. We have seen some of the most bizarre things transpire over the years. So yeah, it's kind of, kind of crazy what may or may not happen. But it's getting closer. And I agree with everything that Nick McClelland said. For those of you that are not aware, but the state objected to the defense's call for the appeal, for the interlocutory appeal, and they cited the potential for another delay as part of the reasoning. Okay. And we've seen since Richard Allen's arrest back in 2022, we have seen many delays, and most of them, if not all of them, have been because of the defense. And so the state is highly objecting to the potential for another delay in this case. He's being charged with 4 counts of murder in the February of 2017 deaths of Abby Williams and Liberty German near the Monon High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana. And he was arrested October of 2022. Now, Judge Gold has already ruled on the interlocutory appeal and said, no go, it's not happening. And she ruled last week that the defense could not mention its alternative murder theory, that the girls had been killed in some sort of a ritualistic fashion during the trial and the proceedings. The order, which granted most of the state's motion of limine, prohibited them from mentioning third-party suspects. Now, Richard Allen's attorneys, Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie, are saying that the decision that Gold made has gutted their defense strategy and asked for Judge Gold's certification so they could take the case to an appellate court. I don't feel that this is going to go anywhere with the appellate court. That's my opinion, and I'm going to put it out there right now. Just my opinion, you guys. They argued the ruling violated Richard Allen's constitutional rights, and the defense had suffered a previous setback back in August when Judge Gull ruled that the reported confessions that Richard Allen has made while he's been incarcerated would be admissible in court, and denied a defense motion to suppress those statements. In his objection to the defense's call for this appeal, the prosecutor in this case, Carroll County's prosecutor Nick McClelland, argued that the defense has had its chance during multiple hearings to present in court substantial evidence showing third parties that were involved in these girls' deaths. The defense was unable to do so, he argued, leading to Frangel's ruling in the prosecution's favor. He also argued that Frangel's ruling is in no way involving a substantial question of law, but instead concerns questions of fact that should be determined at the trial level. And so, while the timeline for an interlocutory appeal is unclear, it would almost certainly delay the planned October 14th start date for Allen's trial if an appellate court takes it up. The state noted an appeal would push back the proceedings yet again and prove burdensome. to not only the state, but the victims' families and the county's finances. Got to remember this case, the longer it goes on, the more it's costing the county, and they just don't have the funds to pay for this drawn out case. In addition, McClelland wrote that there was a high unlikelihood of a different outcome on appeal. And I think that that will be the basis of why an appellate court won't hear the case. Because I believe that because there is a limited chance of a different outcome in an interlocutory appeal, that they won't take it up. So therefore, the burden on the state, the families of the victims, and the county of continuing a long, complex trial so close to the start date is greatly outweighed by the limited chance of a different outcome in an interlocutory appeal, McClelland wrote. If Richard Allen's trial proceeds in October as planned, it will begin with jury selection in Allen County on October 14th. Once the jurors have been seated, they will be transported to Carroll County for the trial proceedings, and they will be sequestered. So that's kind of where that is. And I just kind of wanted to make sure that people understood where this was going. I just really believe that these attorneys, I find it hard to believe that they admitted in June of 2023 that Richard Allen had made many confessions to this crime. And yet since then, a year and 3 months later, we still don't have an alibi for Richard Allen other than he was out there on the Monon High Bridge during the time the girls was abducted, and he was watching the fish and a stock ticker. To me, that is a very flimsy alibi, in my opinion. And if he wasn't on the bridge, where was he? And you would think, rather than throwing out some third-party jargon crap, that they would come up with an actual strategy for explaining where he was and what he was doing when Abby and Libby went missing off that bridge. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. The other thing that has gotten me all these months waiting for this trial to go forward is that the defense continues to state that Richard Allen's rights have been violated, that due process has been violated, and all of this stuff. And they throw these things out all the time. They're constantly talking about it, yet they do everything in their power to delay their client his day in court, to actually be able to face the charges against him and answer for them. And to me, that just doesn't scream of an innocent person. It just doesn't. I just have a really hard time with all of that. And, and he has said so many damning things about the case already to so many different people. It makes anyone, the way the human psyche works, when we hear people confess to something, we believe them. That is our tendency, is to believe them, not to say, oh, this man is lying about doing this. I mean, truly, when you look at false confessions, Richard Allen doesn't even come close to falling into a category of people who have given up false confessions. He doesn't even come close to meeting that criteria at all. And I'm going to go with my family members, my detective family members, who told me way last year when I was talking to them about the case, way last year, after we knew that Richard Allen had confessed. And they told me, they said, whenever perpetrators or defendants confess to family members, it is really hard to get past that. So again, kudos to the defense team for everything that they've done to throw a wrench in this case and to throw a wrench in the trial. They've done everything they can to muddy the waters, which is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to bring up reasonable doubt. Do I like the way they did it? No. Do I like the fact that because there was a gag order placed on this case, that they have chosen to basically try their case in motions? No. I don't agree with any of that. But again, this is where we are, and this is what we've had to deal with. And if we're unhappy about it, I can absolutely only imagine how the family members of Abby and Libby are feeling with all this stuff. And here we go, there for a while, we were constantly having motions, and things were really kind of happening pretty much weekly for weeks. And now things have gone incessantly silent. It's like everything is just so quiet right now. It makes me wonder what is about to happen, and Frank Meister could very well be right in this, that the defense is putting together this phenomenal motion appeal for the appellate court, and maybe that's where we're headed. But no matter, it's still where it is. We still have to talk about what happens if the trial does go forth. So, opening statements are really important, you guys. And when I was talking about them today, and I was doing some research on them and thinking about some of the cases that I have actually followed and watched from opening statement to closing statement, wow. There have been some doozies. But I found a sample that I wanted to go over with you of a prosecution's opening statement. And this was for a case in California, I believe. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today the people are charging Jess Markson with violations of the California Penal Code 187 and 188. We are charging Jess Markson with willful, deliberate, first-degree murder of Taylor Rodriguez. Today, the people will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jess Markson killed Taylor Rodriguez with malice and planning by calling to the stand 4 witnesses. First, Detective Elliot Green, an unbiased government official who examined the defendant's home, will testify that Detective Green will testify in this place And then we will call Toby Keaton, Taylor Rodriguez's close friend, to the stand. Mr. and Mrs. Keaton will testify to what Toby will testify to here. And thirdly, we will call Francis Stone, who examined Taylor Rodriguez's body, and they will testify to what they found during that examination. Finally, the people will call Alex Palmer, the defendant's own gardener, who will testify to what Alex actually saw, heard, and knows about the day that Taylor Rodriguez was murdered. And today, the people will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jess Markson is guilty. So that's an opening statement from a prosecution. And as you can see, they basically laid out their case, talked about their witnesses, what their witnesses were going to testify to, and just, gave a point, and then came to the conclusion. And the conclusion would be that the people will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen is guilty. So now, what is the defense's opening statement look like? Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution would have you believe that Jess Markson is guilty for a crime as heinous as murder. But today, we shall prove otherwise. First, we will call Stevie Rico to the stand, Jess Markson's close friend and co-worker. And Rico will show that, and they're going to enter here whatever Rico is planning on saying. And then we will call Dr. Pat Choi, a qualified psychologist and scientist, who will testify to, and whatever Dr. Choi will testify to would be here. And thirdly, Brooke DeMartini, Taylor Rodriguez's ex-girlfriend / boyfriend, will testify to and enter what Brooke will testify to. Finally, Jess Markson will take the stand and testify to, and then enter Jess's testimony here. And today, we will prove that my client is not guilty. The attorney who's responsible to opening arguments has to write an introductory paragraph. And I talked about that a little bit today, but that has to be a vivid argument of their position in the case. Meaning, is Jess Markson guilty or not guilty? You're supposed to use metaphors and figurative language, but keep it short. Short and simple wins the game in opening statements, you guys. You do not want to lose the jury right off the bat. You want to briefly explain what each witness will testify about and the significance of that testimony. How is it going to help your case? Where the last sentence needs to be a closing argument or a closing paragraph that restates your position and your point. It should be similar to your opening paragraph, but it needs to end very strong. So what would a sample closing statement look like? Well, for the prosecution in this case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we have proved to you that Jess Markson is undeniably guilty of first-degree murder. We have proved this by showing you that Jess Markson had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to commit this heinous crime. Today, you were told by, and then insert evidence that would support your ideas here, and write your powerful closing paragraph here. The defense, on the other hand, their closing statement may look like this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are looking at an innocent person. Jess Markson has committed no crime other than loving Taylor Rodriguez. Today, you are forced and faced by a preposterous amount of circumstantial evidence and theories instead of fact. You were told today, and then they will insert the evidence there. And again, write the powerful closing statement. Why is it so important for opening and closing statements to be concise and able to tell the story? An opening statement is an opportunity, you guys, to outline this case or whatever case it is for the jury and to let the jury know what to expect at trial. It is not an opportunity for you to argue your case. And I think that this is going to play, it's going to be very interesting how this plays out, because we have seen over time and time again how the defense in this case tends to overstep when it becomes, rather than a motion, it's them arguing their case and putting forth their case like a 136-page Frank motion. It is important to remember that jurors know very little about a case before it begins, most often. In fact, attorneys and judges make sure that jurors know nothing about a case before it begins. That way, the jurors can be fair and impartial. So an opening statement is an opportunity to let jurors know what the case is about, to let them know what evidence they should expect to hear, and it should provide them an outline or a roadmap that helps them follow along. It helps to introduce the theme of the case. Every case is different, and every opening statement is different. And a lot of times in the introduction of an opening statement is where the attorneys would welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is John Smith. I'm the prosecutor in this case. It is my pleasure to represent the people of the state of Indiana. And then proceed with, on February 13th, 2017, the defendant in this case, and then they would go on to describe what Richard Allen did in detail. At the conclusion of the case, we will ask for a verdict of guilty. And it may be helpful to point to the defendant in the courtroom when they refer to him during opening statements. The theme, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a defendant who could not control his anger, or a man whose greed got the better of him, or a defendant who is pretending to be insane to avoid being held responsible for his own actions. These are some pretty basic themes. To develop your own theme, you have to try to summarize the prosecution case in a sentence or two. Then they summarize each witness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution will call 3 witnesses to the stand. We will call Officer so-and-so, who will explain to you that he was on duty in Springfield on the night of the robbery and responded to the 7-Eleven and observed the defendant fleeing from the scene with a bag in his hand. We will call the store clerk who was on duty, and she will testify that she recognized the defendant as the robber, even though he had a bandana covering most of his face. And lastly, we will call a government psychologist who will testify that he did a mental health assessment of this defendant. The psychologist will testify that the defendant was definitely not insane at the time of the commission of these crimes. Or, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution will call 4 witnesses to the stand. We will call Mr. Smith, who will testify that he was at his residence when the defendant attacked him without provocation while he sat with his family in the tavern. We will call the emergency room nurse, who will testify that the victim sustained 4 fractured ribs and a broken nose as a result of this unprovoked attack. We will also call the defendant's roommate, who will testify that the defendant bragged about what he did after he returned home that evening. These are just a couple of examples, but they will summarize what each witness is going to testify to. A lengthier opening statement will provide a lot of details as to what each witness will say, refer to the time limitations, and they need to adjust their summaries accordingly. Again, there are time limitations, and you don't want to go too far into that because you can lose the jury. Anticipating the defense's theories. How does the prosecution do that? A good prosecutor's opening statement will try to anticipate the points that the defense is going to raise in their opening. Remember that the prosecution has to give their opening statement first, so you will have to guess a little as to what the defense might say. And in this case, good God only knows what they might say. Oftentimes, the prosecutor will state something along the lines of, ladies and gentlemen, the defense may argue that the defendant acted in self-defense. However, the witnesses will all state that it was the defendant who approached the victim and began attacking him. Or the prosecution will state, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant may argue that the defendant was temporarily insane at the time of the fight. However, we will show that the defendant was merely intoxicated when the fight broke out, and none of the witnesses will describe unusual behaviors. And then the conclusion. At the conclusion of this case, we would ask you to find the defendant guilty, that the state has met its burden of proof. The defense introduction may go something like, good morning, my name is Ralph Jurgensen, and it is my pleasure to represent so-and-so on this very important case. The defendant stands here falsely accused of murder, a very serious crime. At the conclusion of the case, we will ask for a verdict of not guilty. What will their theme look like? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about mistaken identity, or a person who acted out of self-defense, or a person who's mentally ill and didn't know what he was doing. It can often be hard for a person watching a mock trial to think of a theme. However, there are a limited number of defenses an accused party can use. Either the defendant was mistaken for someone else, was forced to act out of self-defense, was insane or suffering from diminished capacity, or perhaps committed a crime, but just not the specific crime that the prosecutor is alleging. The defense will contradict the state's theories. The prosecution hopes that their witnesses will say, however, in fact, the testimony will show. Remember, in a trial, the prosecution gives their opening statement first, and the prosecutor will outline his or her case and will accentuate the positive or only highlight the points of the case that help get a conviction. There are inconsistencies in the case or facts that help the defense. This can happen. If there are inconsistencies in the case or the facts, this could help the defense. You need to be prepared to list all the evidence that helps you in your opening as the defense. For example, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state has claimed that they have an eyewitness who identified my client as the murderer. However, this supposed eyewitness really has poor vision, and it was very dark out the night in question. Or, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state has claimed that my client confessed to killing Abby and Libby. However, my client was coerced and threatened by the police. Or, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has indicated that my client's fingerprints were found on the crime scene. However, There is a legitimate explanation for this. My client was employed as a caretaker for the premises just 6 months prior. Or, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has explained that 3 witnesses saw my client stab the defendant. However, what the prosecutor didn't tell you is that my client suffers from mental illness. He was literally out of his mind that day in question, and we have an expert witness who will testify that my client is insane. The defense will summarize each of their witnesses. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense will call 3 witnesses to the stand. The first witness will testify that she was with my client on the night in question, and my client wasn't even near the town of Springfield where the crime is alleged to have occurred. Our second witness is so-and-so, and he will testify that my client had no motive to commit the burglary because my client was gainfully employed and is a person of honest character. Or, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense will call 2 witnesses to the stand. First will be Mr. Johnson, who will testify that he observed my client on the night of the altercation. And Mr. Johnson will testify that my client was clearly provoked and only struck the alleged victim after he was threatened. Secondly, we will call Dr. Smith to the stand to testify that she was employed as an emergency room physician on the night of the incident. Dr. Smith will testify that she treated the alleged victim for a fracture, and she noticed that the alleged victim was highly intoxicated when he came into the emergency room. Whatever your case is, or whatever the defense is, you will always see them summarize what each witness is expected to say. And their conclusion at the end of the case, we would ask you to find that our client is innocent. The state has not met its burden of proof, and we would ask for a verdict of not guilty. So that's pretty much it, you guys, as far as how that works and some of the examples. And we have, in my opinion, we have some really drama possibilities in these opening statements. I think we have already seen some of that drama play out in some of the other court proceedings and some of the motions and things that have been written. And it would not absolutely shock me to see some of that play out in these opening statements, the drama. I definitely expect Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin to use drama in their opening statement. I believe that Nick will try to be maybe not as dramatic, but bold. I think that he will highlight the heinousness of this crime and the how horrific what happened to them truly was, to paint that picture for the jury. Because again, their whole point is to take the jury to that bridge and put them in that environment as to what happened that day. I think it's going to be very interesting to see if the jury asks for a jury tour to go out to the bridge. I know there was speculation when the bridge was redone that that's the reason they did that, was in case the jury needed to take a field trip. Again, to me, it's beneficial. It's beneficial for anyone who has never been there to go and experience the location. It gives you a completely different handle on the remoteness of this location, the fact that the person would have to have known of this place, and all of that. I'm anxious to hear Nick's opening. I think we're going to learn a lot in the opening statements. But yeah, I mean, you know, again, how good of an orator are these guys? I mean, Frank and Rescue and Jinx have all been there and heard them all in court and listened to them. And just because you're an attorney doesn't mean that you're a good orator and that you're a good speaker and that you're able to get your points across. There are some really bad attorneys out there that have a real trouble speaking to where the average person can understand them. Somebody mentioned to me today that Andrew Baldwin is supposed to be really good at the hook. You know, hooking, getting you interested right away. What's the hook that he's going to use in his opening statement that's going to have the jury on the edge of their seat wanting to know more? They both will have it. The prosecution will have a hook as well as the defense. And, you know, Rescue says all 6 of the lawyers on both sides are extremely talented. So, you know, these guys are not, and gals, sorry, these men and women are not their first day on the block when it comes to being in a courtroom and being in, you know, in this kind of situation. And it's, you know, you don't want to turn the jurors off. And it's a fine line that these attorneys have to walk. It's kind of like a tightrope because they have to be cordial enough and they want the jury to believe them, what they're saying. They want the jury to buy into their story that they're telling, and they want the jury to trust what they're saying. So in doing that, again, we all have difference of opinions, right? And some people can't stand me. Some people in the Delphi community just can't stand me. They don't want to listen to me. They don't want to hear anything I have to say because that's their opinion. They don't like my delivery. They don't like the way I disseminate information. It's the same with the jurors, you guys. How are these people's personalities going to play? How are they going to play in this courtroom? And I think the arrogance that comes with being an attorney, because it's not you have to have some sense of arrogance to do what these men and women do on a daily basis. And they have to be very careful on how they maneuver that. And I mean, you know, Shane says that he thinks Nick's arrogant. Well, I think that Brad Rosie's as arrogant as they come. So that's just me. And I've never even seen him. I mean, I've, you know, only seen him on television. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle some of this evidence and what's the term I'm looking for? What is the outcome going to be when the prosecution starts talking about the actual physical evidence, and how's the defense going to overcome that? How are they going to overcome the bullet? How are they going to overcome the match of the gun and the fact that Richard Allen doesn't loan that gun to anyone? You know what I'm saying? How do people think that that is going to play out for the defense? How are they going to get rid of that? You know, we've heard so much in these motions over the last year about third parties and, odiness and, ritualistic this and ritualistic that. But what we haven't heard is, how do they explain away the bullet? How do they explain away Libby's video that shows Bridge Guy? How do they explain away the fact that 3 teenage girls saw Richard Allen that day? How do they explain away Betsy Blair? How do they explain away the woman who sees him walking down 300 North? How do they explain or combat all of the circumstantial evidence that's piling up? How do they, and whatever, for whatever else, the stuff that we do not know about? And those are the questions that are going to be answered. And it's, how do you tell a jury that's going to be shown the Libby video? Because that's going to play, you guys, in court. We're going to see that video. We'll see and hear that video at some point. Those that will be there will be it. And they're going to play that video in its entirety. They're going to show Bridge Guy coming towards those girls. They're going to show Bridge Guy ordering them down the hill, brandishing a gun, more than likely. They're going to show all of that. The defense has to have some kind of a rebuttal. Are they just going to allow all this stuff to be said and they're not going to say anything? It's going to be enlightening. And, I said years ago, back on my Reddit sub, I said, there will come a time in this case when we go to trial, and what actually transpired that day on that bridge and in those woods is going to come out. And more so than any of us could ever imagine. We think that we've heard enough already about what the crime scene was like and what the girls went through. We haven't even begun to hear the gist of it, you guys. We haven't even begun to hear it. And it's going to be difficult for us, for those that are going to the trial. I believe Aspen and Frank Meister and Rescue and Jinx and some of you other people that will be there, this is going to be some of the hardest stuff you've ever had to hear in your life. And part of it is because there's such an investment in this case because of our deep care about what happened to Libby and Abby and wanting the justice for them. And if you think you wanted justice for them now, wait until you hear everything that happened to them that day. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, CJK, for all the people that has been spreading false rumors, negative things about family members. When all of this stuff gets debunked in court and there is no room to go anywhere other than guilty, in my opinion, it will be interesting to see where all of these people fall that you're talking about. It'll be really interesting. Shane says the defense's only hope is the timeline. I can't see another option. I've always said after DTH, it's all speculation. So making Richard Allen bridge guy is key. I don't think making him bridge guy, he is bridge guy. I don't think there's any making him. He is it. He is the guy. I don't know. Oh yeah, there definitely will be. But it will be interesting to see. I can't imagine that they won't say anything. I think they're going to say a lot of stuff. I think we'll probably more than likely hear conspiracy theorists. They're going to go back to the whole saying of everything is law enforcement's corrupt, all of that. And, the timeline is so freaking tight, you guys. There isn't room for it to be off. I mean, it really isn't. There isn't room. So, I mean, like I said, I think that there are, there's going to be room for a lot of things to happen here, but like I said, I still feel that the defense, they're going to have something to blow the prosecution out of the water. And I really just don't see it. I don't see them having any of that. Laura says, for some reason, creators wanting to make a career of this and cover other cases, who could trust them ever again when they were so sure and confident and they just didn't wait for trial? Yeah. The ones who are conspiracy minded won't be able to see the truth no matter what comes out in court. Absolutely. They will never believe anything that comes out in court. And, the whole thing of the video is fake to me is just hilarious. I mean, it's just hilarious how they even come to that conclusion. But, it is what it is. Jinx is a hugger. I can actually attest to that. She's a good one too. But yeah, we're getting closer, you guys. We are getting closer. And I feel that justice is coming. I hope there isn't a delay, because I honestly am not ready emotionally for another delay in this case. The last time this case was delayed at this point in the juncture, it went into to this year. So, yeah, I really don't want it to bleed into next year. So, it's, it'll be interesting, like I said, and because of everything that's going on with the family and the fact that, they have to take off work for this, to be in the courtroom every day. And, who wouldn't want to be there, right? I mean, they have every right to be there, right? More so than any of us. But to keep doing this to them is just maddening. And I get that the court system is set up the way it is for a reason. I get that. I do. It doesn't make it any easier for the victims' families family members that have to sit back and go through this and watch this on a daily basis. At this point in time, I do not see him pleading or changing his plea. I think that if he was going to change his plea, he would have done it by now. I believe that he may have wanted to do that, but I believe that his wife, his mother, and his attorneys have told him to take his chances with getting one juror to hold out. So I believe that that's what he's going to do. And, when we think of trials and we think of cases and how long it takes cases to get to the courtroom, I go back to Kristen Smart, you guys. I followed Kristen Smart's case from day one when she went missing. And that case, 24 years. 24 years it took to get the man they believed killed her the very first weekend when she went missing. He was the prime suspect. And it took 24 years. And, to watch what Kristen Smart's family went through to get that justice, and all those years that they fought and fought and fought for their daughter. I mean, there's nothing quite like that. None of us have an idea of what that's like. Your whole life is upended. And you live and breathe the case. Everything becomes about the case. I went through this with Fig when I was covering his cousin's case. And, and we were waiting for the trial, and it kept getting postponed and everything. And, when I was talking with Fig about this and how this was just gut wrenching, not only for his cousin's wife and children, but to the family members that were left behind that have to deal with the delays and listening to the excuses for the delays and everything. It's just, I think the time of death will be easily determined in this case because of what Abby and Libby had to eat that morning. We know for a fact that they ate pancakes, and my medical background will tell you that they can determine time of death based on stomach contents. Yeah, Frank Meister's right. Richard Allen doesn't want his family hearing the details of what he did and what happened that day. I just don't understand people and how you can give prayers to somebody that's been charged with a double homicide of 2 children. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I would just pass on that. I wouldn't even give them a time of day. No time of day. Sorry. There is a chance the trial could delay. Yes, we know that. Yeah, very, very much aware. We're hoping that it won't. But yeah. Yeah, this is just pathetic. I mean, it's bad enough to put that stuff out in the airwaves, but to actually start a letter writing campaign to a judge in this kind of case is ridiculous. And this is why social media gets a bad name. This is why Judge Gall doesn't want cameras in her courtroom. This is why, because of the crazy people out there that think that they have a stake in this case. They don't. It's just crazy to me. I just don't, I will never understand. Never understand. And yeah, John Bonet still waiting for her justice. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hi, Ivy Rose. How are you? Good to see you. It started with Westville with Allen's sympathizers. Westville did a great job. He didn't get beat up or unalive himself. They wrapped him in cotton wool. Absolutely. Most prosecutors will tell you their biggest fear in any case is when their defendant is incarcerated and they're awaiting trial. Keeping him safe or her safe. Keeping them alive, making sure that nothing bad happens to them, especially in high-profile cases such as this. I hope that charges will be brought against people in this case. I really do. There are some people that have inserted themselves into this case that absolutely needs to have charges pressed against them. And he's entitled to those appeals. I mean, if he is convicted, he's entitled to those appeals. Just because you get an appeal doesn't mean you win. We just saw that with Keegan Kline. He had an appeal and lost. Case over. So he can continue to try to appeal all he wants to, but it ain't going anywhere. It's just another cog in the judicial wheel. But just because they're convicted doesn't mean those appeals are going to go anywhere. I absolutely agree. Absolutely. Yeah, Carrie, I couldn't agree with you more. I've spoken about this so much over the years. I've done many a video about it on my channel and talked about, how we choose to tell their story matters and why people blame the family or accuse the family in this case. I will never know. Yeah. So, Yeah, they never found it because he discarded it. He said he discarded it. There's a lot of times that weapons that are not found and someone is still convicted of the crime. That doesn't matter. You're never going to have a perfect evidentiary list in any crime. You're going to always have some things that are missing. But yeah, you might be on the wrong channel, God. Sorry. Barbara, I think that there's a couple of things that could happen. She could actually allow the cameras in the courtroom on a time delay. But I don't, yeah, I don't. She also could put out later the audio portion. CJK, I would just actually say exactly what Ruckus always says in this case. And I'll say this to God. That person's gone. Just so you know. They're not going to call me a liar on my channel. My point was going to be what Ruckus always says. You want Richard Allen to go free? Fine. Take him home, rub his feet, give him some hot tea and let him babysit your grandchildren. What was it that Christ said? Many will come in my name, but won't be in my name. That was one of them. God is not God. Yeah, Ivy, I agree with you. The courtroom does have their own cameras. There's plastic bags over them. I think that they shouldn't rely on the media for the coverage at all. And I think the way the Indiana Supreme Court did it worked really well. And I would hope that that's what she would do. We don't know yet. We're not there yet. She hasn't said it, so we'll have to see. So I think what for sure, Karen, absolutely. Shane says, I see why when any of us go on to certain channels, we get abused, but when they come to us, they can't even be civil. I'm so done with the ignorance. Yeah, I, exactly. There's a lot that I will tolerate, but I'm not going to be tolerated being called a liar. But I do know that, I always had said, Robin, I said this years ago, God, why don't they use forensic genealogy? Well, they couldn't in Indiana because there was a law that was keeping them from using it. But, and I think that got turned around, I want to say in 2019, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I would just really was hopeful that they would be able to use genetic genealogy. But again, we don't know where we are with the DNA. We know they have DNA, but we don't know how much. We don't know where that's gone. And again, we're looking from 7 years ago, and the changes in DNA technology has gone through enormous amounts of improvement in 7 years. So yeah. Thanks, David. I really appreciate that. I try to keep it real here. I try to keep to the facts as we know them. And again, we're going to learn more as this proceeds into court. And we do have to wait before, there's a lot of questions out there people have, but we can't answer them for you because we don't know. And I'm not going to answer a question and say, oh, yeah, it's probably this. They have DNA. We just don't know what it is yet. And I know that they have DNA because they were able to use DNA to rule people out. That's how they know that Daniel Nations wasn't the killer. That's how they knew. I mean, they have a list of people that they ruled out with the DNA. So DNA is a great thing if you can get it and if you have it, but a lot of times you don't. And if he wore gloves and wore extra clothing that day, there's a lot of reasons why his DNA was not left on the victims. Again, a lot of these perpetrators have issues with being able to finish a sexual act without me getting any more graphic than that. And if he was unable to do that, and that was, he wouldn't have left DNA that way. So what are some of the other ways of leaving our DNA? Well, it would be any bodily fluid, saliva, transfer DNA from our fingertips, our fingers, any skin cells. Again, if he was scratched or grabbed by the girls, his DNA would be underneath their fingernails, hair. If as long as you have the actual root to get the DNA from, or they can now extract mitochondrial DNA from hair without the root, but mitochondrial DNA is from the mother, and it's not as convincing as the full-fledged DNA that you get from the hair follicle from the actual root. But I'm here to tell you that all of that matters. And we don't know what they got when they went to Richard Allen's home. We don't know everything. We don't know of everything that they took and all of the things that they may or may not have tested. We don't know if they got anything out of the vehicle when they took the vehicle. And we know he drove the vehicle. And so we know that there could have been, I mean, if he was muddy and bloody, there's a possibility that blood evidence could be in that vehicle. And that's been rumored for years about pet hair or cat hair. That's going to be very interesting because Kathy Allen worked at a veterinarian's office, I believe. So it'll be very interesting how the defense would try to explain that away. But I do believe that they may have found something in the car as well. I mean, I know that they took samples of some things from the vehicle. It'll be really interesting to see, you guys. But these are the kinds of things that are going to come up. These are the kinds of things that are going to come out. These questions that we've all had for all of these years, we're going to find out. You know, Doug Carter told us, I can't wait until the day that I can tell you everything we knew and when we knew it. Depends, Shane. The cigarette butt was in the water, I believe. It was floating in the water. So if the cigarette butt was degraded, the DNA that was on the cigarette butt would have been degraded by the water, or diluted. All of those things are possible. I think there's a problem in the John Bonet case. There is a serious problem in Colorado, in Boulder specifically, and they do not want to be embarrassed. And I think it's gone on way too long, and somebody, a special prosecutor, somebody needs to be appointed to step in and take over this investigation and allow these tests to be done now that we're this far out from John Bonet's case. To me, there's nothing wrong with retesting evidence. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know, Camara Lover, what I believe in that case anymore. I still believe that the female officer that was in that house that day had a reason for feeling the way she did when John brought John Bonet upstairs and laid her down, and their eyes met. They were just inches from each other, and she saw something in his face that she said she will never forget. That case has me bothered, has always had me bothered. I don't believe that it was an intruder, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't. I mean, it's just, you know, there's just so many things about that case. And it's sad because John Bonet deserved justice, just like Abby and Libby, just like Kristen Smart, you know, just like Lyric and Elizabeth. They need it too, you know. The Flora Four, they need justice. I just I just think that there's a lot that we don't know yet, and that we will have to wait and see. As far as the unorganized search party goes, they were taking names. They do have lists. I have those lists actually on my computer somewhere of all the names that were taken that day. Yeah, the note makes no sense to me. Nobody is going to sit and take the time to write that note. And I do believe that it was somebody that knew them and knew, whether it was the housekeeper or the housekeeper's husband. I mean, I don't know. They're just somebody close to that family knows. There are so many missing people out there, you guys. So many missing people, and so many stories that need to be told. And it's sad that Yeah, Annabelle, I agree. I think it is very perplexing as to why they won't test the items if they're still available. I feel the same way though about the Scott Peterson stuff, because I'm like, if you are so absolutely positive of someone's guilt, why would you be hesitant in retesting evidence? When you are against retesting evidence, especially when the tests are better than they ever were when the person was convicted, to me, that makes no sense. Yeah, Shane, I'm not sure when the sign-up sheets were done, or what or when for sure, but I just know that there were pages of them. Yeah, exactly. Barry Morphew. There you go. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of cases out there, and it's not just the Delphi case and Abby and Libby's case. There's so many. And again, Lyric and Elizabeth, they're over in Evansdale, another horrifically tragic case of two little girls that's lives were abruptly cut short, and the person who did it has never had to face justice for their crime. And I hope and pray that we're getting close to Evansdale and that we are going to break that case. Because I think that Drew and his wife and Lyric's parents deserve justice. And I know that Steve and Ruckus are working really hard on that one. Absolutely, Evansdale does, as does Flora. As does Flora. Even, it's like they just, the Flora case is just maddening to me because people won't pick it up and run with it. And no matter how much you beg and plead and ask and whatever, they just won't. And it's just maddening to me. Absolutely. So, but guys, that's all I had for you tonight. I just wanted to go over that, and kind of touch base with you guys, because I really hadn't seen you all on my own channel for a while, and I thought, you know what, I'm really not doing a service to my channel by not being here. I need to be here a little bit more than I've been. But for those of you that don't follow my community page, diligently or whatever, on August 16th, I adopted a new baby. I adopted a husky mix. His name is Loki, and he is my baby. He's 9 months old, and he is something, is what I can say. He and I have been bonding and getting to know one another, and I have been spending a lot of time with him. And we have done 70 miles since I got him. We've walked 70 miles together. And I'm in 2 walks this month, one for the American Cancer Society, and one for suicide prevention for veterans. And so I have been super busy. trying to get those in, plus my regular workouts and just all of that. And then I adopted him on the 16th of August. And then on the 18th of August, 2 days later, I was in a car accident and I hit a deer and I totaled my Jeep. And Loki was in the car with me. He was in the front seat, and thank God he wasn't hurt. And thank God I wasn't hurt. But it totaled my Jeep. So I had to rush around for 3 weeks. I was in a rental and I was trying to get the insurance to take care of their issues and stuff. And sorry guys, I'm finally make a decision. I've been up since 5. Baby, he gets me up. So thanks, Carrie. I appreciate that. So anyway, I was in a rental for 3 weeks while I was rushing around trying to find another car. Finally did last week, got my new car. Oh, sorry, don't mean to keep yawning. So just been super busy with all of that stuff going on. I just missed you guys. And I was like, well, you need to pop on and say hello. It's always good to see you all and get to hang out together and talk about the case some. Frank and I, I've discussed this so many times. We don't like to just do lives for no reason. But as I was thinking about it, and I was like, wow, opening statements are getting close, and I know how important the opening statements are. I thought it would be a good time, to talk about them. One of the things that I think that I'm going to do right before the trial happens is I'm going to talk about jury selection and how I did a video about it on my channel a few years ago, but I want to talk a little bit more about what goes into jury selection and how they determine how jurors are seated. I sat on not only a petit jury, but I was also on a grand jury. I served on the grand jury for 3 months. Once a week we met and we heard multiple cases. And it was, I don't know what the rules in Indiana are like versus here in Illinois, but it was the most eye-opening civic thing I've ever done, was to sit on the grand jury. And grand juries are different because when you seat a grand jury, you only get to hear the prosecution side of the case. So to me, there always is going to be an indictment by a grand jury because you're always only hearing one side. You don't get to hear, the other side. So very interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to come on and give you guys a quick synopsis of opening statements and, that what we've got to look forward to in the days and weeks to come. And yes, I will stay on top of it as much as I possibly can so that we get news right away if something, drastically happens or changes. Remember the date, October 13th, the Sunday before jury selection, is the memorial walk for the girls in Delphi at the Freedom Bridge. So I hope that people will come out for this, and it will be the biggest one yet. And show your support for Libby and Abby and the families ahead of the trial. Randy always puts together an absolute great event. I've been to 2, and they are so worth going. I would be going this time, absolutely, for sure, but it's my grandson's 7th birthday, and he would not be happy with me if I missed that. So I am going to be thinking of everyone and missing all of you and wishing that I was with you. But the jury selection is in Allen County. Once the jury is seated, they will be sequestered in Lafayette. They will be housed in Lafayette, and then they will be bused to the courthouse in Delphi every day, and then back to their hotel. And that's how that works. So I hope everyone has a really great rest of your week. If you get a chance, please pay it forward and be kind to someone. Do something for someone. It doesn't have to be monetarily, you guys. I was thinking about it today, about some of the things that people can do to help others. And if you guys ever wonder what something you could do, is to help out a veteran. There are so many veterans out there that need our assistance, and especially elderly veterans. They can't do yard work. Sometimes they are they suffer from all different kinds of physical disabilities or debilitating things, and they just go pick up their yard or mow their grass for them, or see if there's odd jobs that they need done around their house, things like that. Robin, I enjoyed meeting you as well. I enjoyed meeting everybody that was there. I feel such a kinship to some of you, and it's definitely different when you put a face, when you meet someone and you put a face with that person behind the screen name. It's really a whole different ball of wax, kind of. But yeah, we are getting down to the wire, guys. So we're just going to keep plugging along, see where we end up, see if we end up with another delay. Let's hope we don't. Good night, everybody. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. It was good to see all of you. Stay safe. Until next time.